The alien princess chose her mate, the youngest human warrior. HFY Reddit Stories. The air was thin but breathable, carrying a faint scent of something floral and metallic at the same time. Everywhere he looked, he saw creatures moving with grace and purpose, their skin reflecting colors in ways that made him wonder if they were part of the Crystal City itself. Elias was young, perhaps too young for the role he had been given. At 21, he had already achieved a rank in Earth's interstellar defense forces that most soldiers could only dream of after decades of service. His small stature often led people to underestimate him, but what he lacked in size, he more than made up for in intelligence, strategy, and courage. That had earned him the rare assignment of joining Earth's first diplomatic mission on Callistria, a task that required not just physical strength but understanding, tact, and an open mind. He had trained for months to adapt to alien environments. He had studied Callistrian language, customs, and history, memorizing details that most humans would forget within days. Yet nothing in his preparation could fully prepare him for the reality of standing in a grand hall filled with beings who seemed more art than life. Callistrians were tall, elegant, and mesmerizing. Their eyes held depths that seemed to reflect entire galaxies, and their movements were fluid, almost like a carefully choreographed dance. Elias' mission was simple on paper: observe, learn, and ensure Earth's interests were protected. But simple was never really the word for what he was facing. The Callistrians had strict traditions, especially regarding their royal family. Their princess, Melandra, was said to be intelligent, strong-willed, and untouchable by outsiders. Stories on Earth had painted her as a distant figure, surrounded by advisors and guards, untouchable by ordinary people. Most diplomats and soldiers were warned not to approach her and to remain professional at all times. Yet, when Elias first laid eyes on her, standing at the center of a hall that glittered with 1,000 lights, he felt a strange calm. She was tall even by Callistrian standards, her silver-blue hair cascading like liquid metal, her eyes deep and thoughtful. She didn't look at him the way he expected. No curiosity, no judgment, just quiet observation, as if she were trying to understand the human before her. The room was filled with chatter, laughter, and the soft hum of technology blending seamlessly with natural beauty. Diplomats from other worlds spoke in languages he barely recognized. Yet in the midst of all that noise, his attention kept drifting back to the princess. It was unusual for him. Humans had stories about royalty being cold or unapproachable, but she didn't seem distant. There was an intensity to her gaze, a sense that she was measuring everything and everyone carefully. During the reception, Elias moved among the crowd, keeping a respectful distance. He spoke to other delegates, shared small talk, and observed the subtle nuances of Callistrian etiquette. He noticed the way they bowed, the way they gestured, even the rhythm of their speech. Each gesture had meaning, and every action was part of a larger, intricate dance of diplomacy. Most humans would have been overwhelmed, but Elias had a knack for reading people and situations. He absorbed details, connected dots others would miss, and stayed calm under pressure. Then something unexpected happened. Princess Melandra stepped forward, moving toward him in a way that silenced the whispers of the crowd. Diplomats froze mid-conversation and guards tensed. No outsider had ever approached the princess like this. Elias felt his heart skip a beat, not from fear but from surprise. "Lieutenant Monroe," she said in a voice that was clear, melodic, and commanding all at once. "You are the youngest human warrior assigned to this mission, correct? It is an honor to be here." On Earth, people either overlooked his age or assumed he was reckless because he volunteered for dangerous missions. Yet here, in front of an alien princess, she seemed to understand something about him that even his closest friends had not. "I have studied your people," she continued, her eyes locked onto his. "But I have never met one who approaches life with such balance. It is intriguing. Whether human or Callistrian, we all have much to learn." He had spent years training for interstellar diplomacy, but nothing had prepared him for being observed so thoroughly and so personally by someone of such power. For the next few days, Elias continued his duties, always aware of the princess's subtle attention. She attended briefings, wandered the halls of the embassy, and occasionally paused near him as if to observe his work. Each encounter was short, often unspoken, but they built a connection that neither acknowledged openly. Elias began to notice details about her that most visitors would overlook. The way she adjusted the folds of her ceremonial robe, the slight hesitation before she spoke to a guard, the careful attention she paid to expressions on the faces of those around her. She was meticulous, observant, and deliberate, but not rigid. There was curiosity in her movements, a hunger to understand things beyond the palace walls. One evening, after a long day of protocol meetings and security checks, Elias found himself alone on a balcony overlooking the city. The crystalline towers glowed in the soft light of Calistria's twin moons. He could hear faint music from the halls below, but up here everything was quiet. He did not notice her approach at first. A gentle presence, almost soundless, drew near, and then she was there beside him. "You seem at home here," she said softly, her voice almost blending with the wind. Elias turned to her, surprised. "I try," he replied. "It is not easy, but beauty like this, it makes it easier to focus." He realized that beyond her royal duties, she was curious, intelligent, and, dare he admit, kind. And more than that, he felt a spark of recognition, as though they were two people from different worlds yet capable of understanding one another. They stood together in silence, letting the moment linger. Neither spoke of politics, diplomacy, or duty. They simply existed in that shared space, learning from each other in ways that went beyond words. Elias knew that this was only the beginning. Something extraordinary had begun between him and the princess, something that neither protocol nor tradition could contain. Little did he know, that brief encounter would set in motion events that would challenge everything both of them believed about duty, loyalty, and the possibilities of connection between humans and aliens. The days following their first private encounter were filled with a strange tension. The palace and embassy halls, usually alive with routine chatter, seemed different to Elias. He walked through corridors lined with gleaming crystal, feeling eyes on him from corners he couldn't see. Sometimes he caught glimpses of Princess Melandra, her presence like a quiet rhythm that followed him through every room. She never spoke to him openly in front of others, yet their silent understanding seemed to grow stronger with every passing day. Elias found it difficult to concentrate on mundane tasks. Even when he was supposed to focus on reports, security checks, or strategy sessions, his mind wandered to her. He thought about the way she observed the world with such careful attention, and he marveled at how someone could balance power, responsibility, and curiosity so effortlessly. He reminded himself that he was a soldier first, a diplomat second, and any personal feelings had to wait. Still, a small part of him could not ignore the pull he felt. Melandra, too, felt the tension. She had been trained her entire life to follow tradition, to choose carefully among her own kind, and to maintain the distance that royalty required. And yet this human, a young warrior, inexperienced by Calistrian standards, had entered her world and unsettled it in ways she had never anticipated. She found herself listening when he spoke, even when the conversation was about trivial matters. She noticed the small details he observed, the quiet way he carried himself, and how he treated everyone around him with respect. Most humans she had seen in her life were brash, proud, or too timid to notice the subtleties of Calistrian culture. Elias was neither. Their next encounter came during a joint military exercise that Earth forces had arranged to help Calistrian soldiers practice coordination. Elias led a small team of humans through a series of obstacle courses and tactical drills, with Melandra observing from above in a control tower. She took notes, not for protocol, but because she genuinely wanted to understand his methods. After the exercise, she approached him as the others dispersed. "You are precise," she said, her tone unreadable, yet carrying a hint of approval. "Not a single unnecessary move, and you guide your team with care. I have not seen this from other humans or from many Calistrians. A mission is only as strong as the team, and a leader is only as strong as those who follow him." Around them, the sun reflected off the crystalline towers, casting dazzling patterns that danced across the ground. The beauty of the moment was so striking that Elias almost forgot his usual caution. He wanted to ask questions, to understand her as she tried to understand him, but he held back. Words were unnecessary, presence spoke volumes. As the days turned into weeks, their interactions became more frequent, though always careful. They would meet in libraries filled with knowledge from both Earth and Calistria, exchanging ideas about history, culture, and strategy. Sometimes they walked through the palace gardens at dusk, silent but comfortable in each other's presence. The gardens were a wonder of alien engineering, with glowing plants that shifted colors as they absorbed the fading sunlight. Small streams of luminescent water meandered through the paths, and birds with translucent wings sang notes that seemed almost musical enough to touch the soul. During one of these walks, Melandra spoke about her own struggles. People expect me to act in a certain way, to choose a path predetermined before I was born, she said quietly. Every decision is scrutinized. I am watched constantly, and yet I feel isolated. Sometimes I wonder if anyone will ever understand me. To observe, to try. The Calistrian court was a place of politics and intrigue, and whispers began to circulate. Some nobles viewed Elias as a dangerous influence, a human meddling in royal affairs. They questioned why the princess spent time with him, why she listened to his observations, and why she sometimes smiled when others would have expected silence or protocol. Rumors swirled like invisible storms, testing both Melandra and Elias. Elias noticed the tension but refused to back down. He approached each day with the same quiet confidence, refusing to be intimidated by whispers or suspicious glances. "We are here to build understanding," he reminded himself. "Not to win favor, not to prove ourselves. Just to learn and help others see the value of cooperation." So they devised small routines, brief meetings in secluded areas, private discussions in libraries, and walks in the gardens, always ensuring that they were discreet. Each moment became a precious opportunity to learn about one another, to bridge the gap between human and Calistrian perspectives. One evening, during a quiet dinner with Earth diplomats, a sudden security alert interrupted the meal. A minor border dispute had erupted between two Calistrian provinces, threatening to escalate into something larger. Human and Calistrian officials scrambled to respond. Elias was called immediately to advise on strategy and assist with communication. The princess appeared shortly after, observing the preparations with calm focus. Together, they coordinated a plan. Elias suggested ways humans could assist in communication and logistics, while Melandra leveraged her authority to calm tensions within her own people. It was the first time they worked side by side under real pressure, and it was a revelation. They saw each other's strengths in action: his adaptability, her decisiveness, his empathy, her insight. After the situation was resolved, Melandra sought him out in the quiet of the palace corridors. "You handled that well," she said softly, "better than I expected." They were allies in thought and intention, bridging two worlds through trust, respect, and courage. In those weeks, Elias also learned more about the cultural expectations of Calistria. He witnessed the strict rituals surrounding leadership, marriage, and loyalty. He realized that the princess's choice to spend time with him, to listen and learn, was far more significant than anyone could imagine. To the Calistrian people, such attention from a royal figure was nearly sacred, and yet she gave it freely to him, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. It was a truth that both thrilled and terrified him. Thrilled because he felt seen and respected in a way he had never experienced. Terrified because he understood the consequences if anyone discovered the depth of their connection. One misstep could jeopardize peace, trust, and perhaps even their lives. Yet, despite the risks, neither of them could ignore the bond forming between them. It was subtle at first, in shared glances, mirrored movements, and the quiet confidence that grew when they worked together. And then, gradually, it became something more, a shared understanding that went beyond words, a recognition that two different worlds could meet in the hearts of two very different people. Elias often stayed late at the embassy, reviewing reports, learning more about Calistrian culture, and preparing for the next day. Melandra sometimes appeared not to watch, but to converse, to share her thoughts on diplomacy, philosophy, or even the beauty of Calistria itself. They laughed occasionally at small cultural misunderstandings, like when Elias mispronounced a word in her language or mistook a gesture. Those moments were rare treasures, small glimpses of friendship that strengthened their trust. By the end of the month, both had changed in subtle ways. Elias had grown more confident in navigating an alien world, more aware of the complexities of leadership and diplomacy. Melandra had learned to see humanity not as a chaotic, unpredictable force, but as a species capable of empathy, courage, and wisdom. Each encounter, each shared moment, had bridged the gap between their worlds, slowly but surely. It was in this quiet rhythm, in the balance between duty and discovery, that the first true spark of connection ignited. And though neither spoke of it openly, both knew that their lives had been altered forever. In a world of rules, expectations, and invisible boundaries, a young human warrior and an alien princess had found something remarkable: understanding, respect, and the first glimmer of trust. The next challenge came suddenly, without warning. One morning, a high alert echoed through the embassy and the palace. A diplomatic mission on the far side of Calistria had gone awry. Reports indicated that a human research team and a local Calistrian settlement had encountered a serious misunderstanding over territory and resources. The dispute was minor at first, but with tensions already high, it threatened to escalate into open conflict. Elias was summoned immediately. He ran through the corridors of the embassy, his mind sharp and focused. Though he was young, he had faced dangerous situations before, and he knew that calm thinking would be crucial. Melandra appeared not long after, her expression serious but composed. She had already gathered her advisors, but now she turned to Elias with quiet authority. "Lieutenant Monroe," she said, her voice carrying both command and trust, "I need your perspective on this. Your people understand humans, and I need guidance on approaching this matter without inflaming it. Emotions are high on both sides, and a single misstep could trigger larger unrest." Together, they began to piece together a plan, combining human problem-solving with Calistrian knowledge of the terrain and culture. It was the first time they had worked together under such intense pressure, and the synergy between them was undeniable. Elias suggested a route that would allow calm contact between the groups, using mediators from both species to ease tensions. Melandra adjusted the approach to accommodate Calistrian customs, ensuring that her people would not feel their authority was being undermined. Hours passed as they refined the plan. The atmosphere was tense but focused, filled with quiet dialogue, careful calculations, and moments of brief laughter when small mistakes were corrected. The connection between them deepened, strengthened not by words of affection, but by shared purpose and mutual respect. They were learning to trust one another, to rely on one another in ways that transcended the boundaries of their species. Finally, they launched the mission. Elias led a team of human mediators, accompanied by Calistrian guards and advisors. Melandra oversaw the operation from a nearby command center, monitoring every movement, every decision. The first encounters were tense. Humans and Calistrians regarded each other with suspicion, and old fears threatened to reignite. But Elias' calm demeanor and Melandra's authority created a balance that kept the situation from spiraling out of control. By the end of the day, what had begun as a potential disaster was transformed into a delicate but successful negotiation. A truce was established, agreements were reached, and both sides gained a sense of cautious trust. Elias and Melandra had not only prevented conflict, they had demonstrated that cooperation was possible, even in situations that seemed hopeless. When they returned to the embassy, exhausted but triumphant, there was a quiet moment between them. Alone in the observation deck, overlooking the crystalline city as the sun set, Melandra turned to Elias. "You were remarkable today," she said softly. "You remained calm when others would have panicked. You inspired trust not just in your people, but in mine as well." They shared a quiet laugh, a release of tension that neither expected but both needed. And in that moment, the unspoken bond between them became undeniable, a connection forged not by words of romance, but by shared challenges, understanding, and mutual respect. Yet the peace they had achieved was fragile. Word of their successful mission spread quickly through the palace and embassy. Some praised their teamwork, recognizing the value of collaboration across species. Others whispered doubts, questioning why a human was so closely involved with the princess, and whether it was proper for a royal to spend so much time with an outsider. Elias was aware of the whispers but refused to let them affect his focus. He continued to work diligently, learning more about Calistrian culture and assisting in negotiations, while Melandra maintained her composure in public, balancing her duties with the private moments they shared. Each challenge strengthened their partnership, teaching them to navigate the delicate line between personal connection and professional responsibility. During one late night in the embassy library, Elias discovered a rare moment of calm. He was studying ancient Calistrian texts when Melandra entered quietly, carrying a small book of her own. She sat across from him, placing the book carefully on the table. "I thought you might like this," she said, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the library lights. Elias looked at the book, then back at her. "Thank you, Your Highness. I've been curious about these texts, but never had the chance to study them in detail." They spoke of dreams, ideas, and philosophies, exploring the similarities and differences between their worlds. It was in these quiet moments that their respect and admiration for one another grew deeper, forming a foundation that could withstand political pressure and societal expectations. Not all lessons were easy, however. One day, a senior Calistrian advisor confronted Melindra, questioning her frequent private meetings with Elias. The advisor's words were sharp, laced with warning and disapproval. "Your Highness, your attention to this human is inappropriate," he said. "It sets a precedent that could undermine your authority and disrupt traditions carefully maintained for centuries." "I see no reason to deny that, simply because he is not of Calistrian birth." Despite the opposition, Elias and Melindra continued to meet discreetly, finding ways to learn from each other without drawing undue attention. They studied language, culture, and strategy, often challenging one another with questions and ideas that pushed the boundaries of their understanding. These sessions were not merely academic. They were opportunities to connect, to see the world through each other's eyes, and to build trust that transcended the limits of protocol. One afternoon, as they walked through the palace gardens, a sudden rainstorm caught them off guard. The drops were warm and fragrant, carrying the scent of Calistrian flora. They ran for cover beneath a glowing canopy of plants, laughing as they shook off the rain. For a brief moment, the weight of responsibility and expectation lifted. They were not princess and soldier, not diplomat and warrior. They were two people sharing a rare, human moment of joy. "That was unexpected," Elias said, smiling as he wiped water from his face. Melindra laughed, the sound clear and musical. "Life is full of surprises, Lieutenant. Sometimes we must embrace them even if they challenge what we think is proper or safe." It was about trust, understanding, and the quiet recognition that they had found something rare, a connection that could withstand the scrutiny of their worlds. As the days passed, political pressures continued to mount. Some Calistrians viewed their interactions with suspicion, while some humans wondered whether Elias was overstepping his role. Yet each challenge only strengthened their resolve. They had learned that connection was not about appearances or approval. It was about shared purpose, mutual respect, and the courage to stand together even when the path was uncertain. By the end of this period, Elias and Melindra had become not only partners in diplomacy, but also confidants. They had faced challenges together, navigated misunderstandings, and found ways to communicate across cultural divides. Their partnership was a living example of what could be achieved when two worlds met not in conflict, but in understanding. Though neither spoke openly of affection, both knew that their bond had grown deeper than either had expected. It was a quiet, steady flame, one that would guide them through the challenges yet to come, and one that would change the course of their lives and perhaps the future of both human and Calistrian societies. In a universe full of differences, misunderstandings, and danger, they had discovered a rare truth. Connection, trust, and respect could bridge even the widest gaps. And as they prepared for the next trials, both knew that whatever challenges awaited, they would face them together. A few weeks had passed since the successful resolution of the border dispute, and for a short time, it seemed as if calm had returned to the embassy and the palace. Yet, the peace was fragile. Political tensions simmered beneath the surface, and whispers of doubt and disapproval never fully disappeared. Some Calistrian nobles were unsettled by the growing influence of a human in matters of state, and some human diplomats worried that Elias' close connection to Princess Melindra might jeopardize negotiations. One morning, a message arrived from the Council of Governors, requesting an urgent audience with Melindra. Elias was summoned to accompany her, though he was unsure what to expect. The council was known for its strict adherence to tradition, and its members were rarely impressed by innovation or empathy. He felt a mixture of anticipation and unease as he walked beside the princess through the glittering halls. When they entered the council chamber, a hush fell over the room. The council members were tall and imposing, their expressions unreadable. At the center sat Elder Carrion, a man whose authority over Calistrian politics was nearly absolute. "Princess Melindra," he began, his voice firm, "reports have reached us that your attention to human matters is excessive. You appear to be influenced by Lieutenant Monroe's counsel beyond what is customary. This is cause for concern." The council was questioning not only her judgment, but the propriety of her interactions with Elias. "Elder Carrion," she replied evenly, "my duty is to the people of Calistria. Lieutenant Monroe's guidance is based on merit, not origin. His counsel has helped prevent conflict and foster understanding between our worlds. Should we not value results over tradition alone?" He understood the delicate balance. One wrong word could tip the situation against them. After a tense pause, Elder Carrion leaned forward, his gaze sharp. While your accomplishments are noted, Princess, you must recognize the potential consequences. Your decisions set examples. A human is not of our world. Influence from outside may be seen as interference. Are you willing to risk your authority, and perhaps the trust of your people, for this alliance? Should we ignore such qualities simply because he is human? It was clear that their influence and reputation were being tested in a way they had never imagined. When the council meeting concluded, Melandra and Elias returned to the observation deck, away from prying eyes. Both were quiet, processing the intensity of the encounter. "It is always more complicated than I expect," Elias said finally. She smiled faintly, though her eyes reflected fatigue. "Yes, authority is never simple, responsibility is never easy, and yet we must navigate it for the sake of our people. We cannot ignore what is right, even if it is difficult," she said softly, "and we cannot hide from what we feel, even if it is dangerous." They needed to demonstrate not only competence, but the integrity of their intentions. Over the next days, Elias worked tirelessly alongside Melandra, preparing for upcoming diplomatic missions and peace negotiations. Their efforts included meetings with both human and Calistrian leaders, strategy sessions on resource distribution, and mediation exercises for smaller disputes. Each task brought them closer together, but it also amplified scrutiny. Every gesture, every decision was observed and analyzed. One afternoon, they received intelligence about unrest in a distant settlement caused by misunderstandings over resource management. Elias immediately began drafting a plan for mediation, while Melandra coordinated with local authorities. They decided to visit the settlement together, blending diplomacy with on-site assessment. Traveling to the settlement was a journey through breathtaking landscapes. The terrain shifted from crystalline forests to luminescent plains, rivers of glowing water snaking through the land. The settlement itself was small but vibrant, with Calistrians and humans working side by side under difficult conditions. Elias observed the community, noting the subtle tensions that threatened harmony. Melandra interacted with the inhabitants, listening to concerns and asking questions with a genuine interest that inspired trust. Their combined efforts yielded remarkable results. Through dialogue and compromise, they helped the community reach an agreement that satisfied both humans and Calistrians. The process required patience, empathy, and careful negotiation, and it highlighted the effectiveness of their partnership. Elias was impressed by her ability to inspire confidence and loyalty, while Melandra admired his calm judgment and strategic thinking. As they prepared to leave the settlement, a small celebration was held in their honor. People from both species expressed gratitude for their efforts. Children laughed and played around them, unaware of the political pressures, but sensing the warmth and sincerity of their actions. For a moment, the world felt simple and harmonious, a rare reprieve from the constant challenges of leadership and diplomacy. Yet, even in this peaceful moment, danger was never far away. News arrived that a faction within the council had petitioned for Melandra to formally distance herself from Elias, citing concerns over propriety and influence. The decision rested with her alone, and the pressure was immense. That evening, Elias and Melandra walked together along a cliff overlooking the ocean of glowing water that stretched to the horizon. The air was warm, scented with the blossoms of Calistrian flora. Silence enveloped them, but it was a comforting silence, not an empty one. "You must make a decision soon," Elias said quietly, aware of the weight of his words. She nodded, her eyes reflecting the soft light. "Yes, I know it is not easy. My choices affect many, far more than just us. But I cannot abandon what is right or what I believe in. Whatever you choose, I will support you. Not because I expect reward or recognition, but because I believe in you and in the good you can achieve. And that is precious." She spoke clearly, articulating the success of the missions and the positive outcomes of human-Calistrian cooperation. Her words, backed by results, silenced much of the opposition. While not all doubts were erased, the council began to recognize that her partnership with Elias was not a threat, it was a strength. Elias continued to support her, observing, advising, and guiding without overstepping boundaries. Their teamwork had become a model of interspecies cooperation, demonstrating that respect, intelligence, and empathy could overcome even the most rigid traditions. Yet, both knew that challenges would continue to arise. Rumors, political maneuvering, and the expectations of two worlds could not simply disappear. But in facing these challenges together, they had discovered something invaluable. trust, loyalty, and the courage to stand for what was right, even when it was difficult. As night fell over the crystalline city, they stood together once more, looking toward the horizon. Stars shimmered overhead, and the twin moons cast a soft glow over the towers. In that quiet, shared moment, they understood that the journey ahead would not be easy. But they also knew that they would face it side by side, with courage, respect, and unwavering commitment to each other and the people they served. In a universe where differences often led to conflict, they had found a rare and extraordinary truth. That connection, understanding, and trust could bridge the widest gaps. And though the path ahead was uncertain, Elias and Melandra were ready to meet it together, their bond stronger than any challenge that awaited them. Tension had been building for weeks. The council's scrutiny, whispers in the palace, and the delicate balance between human and Callistrian expectations all weighed heavily on Melandra. Yet she had grown stronger through it all, and her partnership with Elias had become a source of resilience. Each challenge they faced together had strengthened not only their bond, but also their ability to lead with wisdom, courage, and empathy. One morning, an urgent message arrived. A neighboring system had begun showing signs of instability. Reports suggested that a coalition of factions was preparing for aggressive action near Callistria's borders. It was unclear whether humans would be affected, but the threat demanded immediate attention. The council requested a joint mission, and both Melandra and Elias were expected to represent their people on the front lines of negotiation. Elias felt the familiar rush of adrenaline mixed with focus. He had faced dangerous situations before, but this was different. The stakes were not just strategy or diplomacy, they involved lives, trust, and the fragile hope for peace. Melandra moved with calm determination, her leadership apparent in every step. Together, they prepared for the mission, reviewing data, maps, and communications protocols, ensuring that they could respond to any scenario. When they arrived at the negotiation site, a neutral zone on a barren but strikingly beautiful planet, tension was palpable. Representatives from multiple systems gathered, each wary of the others, their distrust evident in rigid postures and cautious words. Elias and Melandra approached together, presenting a united front. Their presence was deliberate, two leaders from different worlds standing side by side, demonstrating the possibility of cooperation and understanding. The first hours of negotiation were tense. Representatives argued over boundaries, resources, and previous grievances. Voices rose, accusations were made, and it seemed as if diplomacy might fail before it even began. Elias observed carefully, noting subtle cues in tone, expression, and gesture. Melandra listened, her sharp mind processing information quickly, her words measured and precise. Gradually, their strategy began to work. Elias offered solutions that were both practical and fair, appealing to logic and common interest. Melandra spoke with authority, reminding the factions of the consequences of conflict and the benefits of cooperation. They complemented one another perfectly. His calm reasoning, her commanding presence, his careful observation, her inspired leadership. As hours turned into a full day, small breakthroughs occurred. Compromises were made, misunderstandings clarified, and trust slowly began to emerge. The factions started to see that peace was not only possible but achievable if approached with respect and open minds. Elias' suggestions, though simple, often bridged the gap between tradition and innovation, while Melandra's decisive actions ensured that authority and order were maintained. By the evening, a preliminary agreement had been reached. Representatives from all sides expressed cautious optimism, while Elias and Melandra shared a quiet glance that conveyed relief, pride, and mutual admiration. They had faced an enormous challenge together and emerged stronger, not only in their leadership but also in their understanding of one another. That night, alone in their temporary quarters, they finally allowed themselves to speak freely. "You were extraordinary today," Melandra said softly. "Your insight and patience, it made all the difference." Stars shone brightly in the sky above, their light reflecting the beauty of the planet and the promise of what they had achieved. It was then that Melandra spoke again, her voice quieter but no less sincere. "There is something I must say, Elias. You have proven yourself not only as a warrior and advisor, but as someone I trust completely. That trust is rare and it is precious." In that moment, all the tension, uncertainty, and pressure of the past months seemed to fall away. They were simply two individuals, bound by trust, shared purpose, and growing respect for one another. The following days were filled with the formal signing of agreements. Delegates praised the cooperation, noting the human and Calistrian collaboration as a model for future diplomacy. Media from multiple worlds covered the event, highlighting the unprecedented partnership between a human and a Calistrian royal. Some traditionalists voiced disapproval, but the results were undeniable. Lives had been saved, conflict had been avoided, and a foundation for future peace had been laid. In the quiet that followed, Melandra invited Elias to walk with her through the gardens of the temporary residence. The path was lit by bioluminescent plants, their glow reflecting in the calm water of small streams. The air carried the familiar scent of Calistrian flora, and the soft hum of the environment made the moment feel almost sacred. "You have changed my world, Elias," she said, her voice soft and reflective. "Not just through strategy or diplomacy, but by showing me that connection, trust, and understanding are stronger than fear and tradition. You have shown me that leadership is not about power alone, but about empathy, courage, and vision. I am grateful to have witnessed it, and even more grateful to have shared it with you." It was a connection that neither could ignore, built on respect, trust, and the rare understanding that comes only from facing trials together. Eventually, they returned to the palace on Calistria, where the council awaited their report. This time, however, the atmosphere was different. Their success in negotiation and mediation had earned respect, and even skeptics acknowledged the value of their partnership. Elder Carrion, who had once warned Melandra against human influence, nodded in quiet approval. "You have demonstrated the power of cooperation," he said, "and the wisdom to trust in those who act with integrity, regardless of origin." He had arrived as the youngest human warrior assigned to a diplomatic mission, and he now stood as a trusted partner to a leader whose intelligence and vision inspired him every day. Together, they had proven that barriers of species, tradition, and expectation could be overcome through courage, trust, and respect. In the days that followed, Calistrians and humans alike began to adopt new ways of cooperating, inspired by the example set by Melandra and Elias. Joint projects in science, education, and exploration flourished. Young Calistrians and humans alike were encouraged to learn from one another, to build bridges instead of walls. The seeds of lasting peace had been planted, nurtured by the bond between a young human warrior and an alien princess. One evening, after the final reports had been submitted and the celebrations concluded, Elias and Melandra found themselves alone once more. The city below shimmered with lights, the reflection of countless crystal towers sparkling under twin moons. They stood together, hands brushing, hearts aligned in quiet understanding. "This journey has been remarkable," Elias said. "I never imagined that a soldier like me could be part of something so significant. And I never imagined that a human could teach me so much, not about the world, but about courage, loyalty, and integrity. You have proven yourself in ways that matter not just to me, but to all of us. Whatever challenges the future holds, I want to face them by your side." The twin moons reflected in the crystal towers as they stood together, a symbol of unity, hope, and the extraordinary potential that arises when two very different people choose to understand, support, and trust one another. And though the universe remained vast, uncertain, and full of challenges, Elias Munro and Princess Melandra had discovered a truth far greater than fear, doubt, or tradition. That connection, integrity, and courage could bridge worlds, inspire change, and create a lasting legacy.